God's family plan, 12 of 24. What great New Testament men had in common? Hello, everybody. I'm Jim McCotter. Welcome. The great New Testament men had two things in common. They worked with their Father, and they obeyed their Father. Note how Jesus affirmed both of these points in his two brief stories. The first one is in Matthew 21:28 through 31. Jesus said, "A man with two sons told the older boy, 'Son, go out and work in the vineyard today.' The son answered, 'No, I won't go.' But later he regretted what he said and then went. Then the farmer told the other son, 'You go.' And he said, 'Yes, sir, I will.' But he didn't go. Which of the two did the will of his father?" They replied, "The first." Then the second story is in Matthew 21:33 through 37. It says this, "Then Jesus later said, 'A certain landowner planted a vineyard, built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers grabbed his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. So the landowner sent a larger group of his servants to collect for him. But the results were the same. Finally, the owner sent his son, thinking, 'Surely they will respect my son.' But they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him." End quote. Jesus told both stories for different purposes, but in both stories, Jesus demonstrated the honor of an adult son obeying their fathers, even at the cost of a son's life. And also, in both stories, Jesus showed how sons were working with their fathers. As seen in Matthew 4:18 through 22 and Luke 5:7 through 11, the men that Jesus called to be with him and change the world were brothers working together with their father in their family fishing business. Both Andrew and Peter and James and John. How did Paul say that Timothy proved himself? To the whole church at Philippi, Paul wrote in Philippians 2:2, quote, "You know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son with his father, he has served with me." Now, look at the most perfect son example in the world and how a son honors his father. Jesus honored both his earthly father as well as his heavenly father. Jesus honored his physical parents as he always, quote, "was obedient to them," end quote, Luke 2:51. One of the main reasons God places the fifth commandment, to honor your father and mother, in the highest position after honoring God himself, is because fathers and sons are the greatest picture here on earth of God the Father and his Son. Look how Jesus honored his father. No father that I know has ever asked his son to suffer unjustly and die for others who may or may not even love and appreciate him after that. But that is exactly what Jesus' father asked his son to do. And don't think Jesus wanted to naturally do that. He asked the Father to not have to do it 3 times, but always said, quote, "Not my will, but your will be done," end quote. What an amazing example for a son. Solomon said in Proverbs 23:26, "My son, give me your heart, and let your eyes delight in my ways," end quote. If you're not willing to give your heart to your father, you won't begin to understand what Jesus meant to follow him. Matthew 16:24, Jesus said, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." End quote. Am I willing to do whatever it takes to deny myself, take up my cross, to honor my Father as Jesus did? Do you realize Jesus' whole life was dedicated to denying himself to only do what his Father wanted him to do? Romans 15:3, quote, "For even Christ didn't live to please himself," end quote. How many of the following verses can we say have been true with us and our relationship with our Father? Or how many will we let be true with us and our Father? John 5:18 through 20. Quote, "So Jesus explained, He does only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son also does. End quote. John 8:27 through 29 says, "So Jesus said, I do nothing on my own, but say only what my Father taught me." End quote. John 14:31, "But I will do what the Father requires of me, so that the world will know that I love the Father." End quote. John 15:10, "I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love." End quote. What about John 18:11? "But Jesus said to Peter, Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me?" End quote. And then finally Luke 22:44 and 41, quote, "Jesus prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. He knelt down and prayed, Father, if you're willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." End quote. It will not be easy to always obey our Father. It was not easy for Jesus. But you may say, well, that was Jesus and he was God. If we use that excuse to not follow Jesus' example to honor our Father as Jesus did, then we can use that same excuse to not follow any example of Jesus for any area of our life. But Jesus was not the only example of a son honoring his father to the point of death. What about Isaac and Abraham's son? Isaac quietly submitted to his father while he was tying him up on the altar for sacrifice. Isaac became the picture of Christ's sacrifice. The son that suffers the most will be the greatest picture today of Jesus and his Father if we sacrifice for our Father, like Jesus did. The Apostle Paul said in Philippians 2, verse 8 through 11, Jesus humbled himself in obedience to God his Father and died a criminal's death on a cross. And for this reason, God, his Father, highly exalted him. End quote. Does the Bible command us to honor and obey any human on earth more than our Father? Yet millions of men for centuries have honored and obeyed their military commanders even to the point of death. And they're honored for doing that. What about honoring our Father that much? Our father and mother are the only two people on earth we are commanded to honor by God in his 10 commandments. Many sons and daughters are more respectful and obedient to their employer than their father. Most sons and daughters never even think of doing some business with or under their father. However, most sons work hard helping build some other man's business, never thinking how they might do that with their own father. What about those sons who gladly submit to their sports coach? They may sweat blood and tears for years under some coach, which they will probably never see again after finishing school. What about working that long and hard under our Father, which could benefit the rest of our life? Jesus sweat drops of blood just contemplating what his Father was asking him to do. Luke 22:44. In Malachi 1:6, God said, "A son honors his father, and a servant respects his master. If I am a father and master, where are the honor and respect I deserve?" End quote. It's interesting. God did not tell us to honor our earthly father the same as we honor him, but rather to honor him the same way we honor our earthly father. Think about that. God assumes we greatly are honoring and serving our earthly father.